Good morning, Rabbi Isai. You know what? It was such a good one. Let's do it again. Good morning, Rabbi Isai. Not bad, not bad. Thank you for your amazing shiur. Can't wait to organize a group in Australia. The twin. There were two twins here last week from Australia. Yeah, we have. Yumi and this, I don't know. Australia is a very large place. Maybe they're in the Great Barrier Reef. Who knows where they want to organize the thing? Ari Bloom from London. When I was in the hospital for some minor treatment recently, I shared a ward with a retired zookeeper who worked at the London Zoo. He had some great stories to share. Your zoo experience reminds me of one of them. The first animal this fellow looked after was a male silverback gorilla, 300 pounds. Had a very effective way of keeping him in check. By the way, Ari Bloom is the one that writes a lot in the R Merkaz. Check out the R Merkaz. He takes some of my stuff and he makes it a lot better than I can ever wish to say it. Which reminds me actually that he wrote this week's one. It's not his fault, my fault. I messed up with Reb Chia. I said it was the son, it was somebody completely different. Okay, so ignore that. It's my mistake, not his. Rebbe Chia and Chia Bray, okay, whatever. The keeper would carry a small plastic spider in his pocket and took it out when the gorillas started to get aggressive. Apparently that was enough to scare this 300-pound behemoth into submission. When the gorilla was really upset, he'd take out a little tiny spider and show it to the gorilla, and the gorilla would... On a separate note, we look forward to replicating the New York shiur in London one day soon. Kol Tov, Ari Bloom. Dear Belly, it was really beautiful and heartwarming to see the achdus of the New York shiur, seeing Yidden in all stripes and forms of walk, sitting side by side, and for bringing together after the shiur. I think this is due to the tremendous hashpaya I have on everyone through the magic of your shiur. Also, I've been wondering where my old roommate Nachman Seltzer is. Where is Nachman Seltzer? So he wrote to me that for now he's learning privately one-on-one with his son. We'll see how long that lasts. Huh? He doesn't ask questions. He does his own thing. He says, can you please send him my regards? Who else wants to send regards? You? Okay. Another thing, where's Avi Kamiansky? Where's Avi? He's coming back today. You? Rabbi Leader is back. Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Leader. And you met Avi in the Israeli, in Ben Gurion, so he's back. Where is he now? Chutzpah! Right, Rabbi Leader. Attached is a picture of me speaking with you before the flat shiur. Moshe Handler, I believe he's from Lakewood, if I'm not mistaken. Dear Belly, I'm an engineer, so I calculated the statistic of getting aliyah based on the pasuk you saw in Daf Yomi. I said it was 1 in a million that I got a aliyah shlishi, and it was exact that pasuk. It's not on Shabbos; it was on a Thursday. So there are 5,850 psukim. Because it's 1 in 1,000. I don't know if he put in all the calculations, but he says that he is a engineer. Yasher Koyach, Jacob Lesh, West Hampton, New York. This is a beautiful picture. Morty Rasby, who sits right over here, he's going through all sorts of medical difficulties, and he had a surgery this past Wednesday. Who was his nurse? Bentzi Novak. Who's Bentzi Novak? He sits in the back a lot when he's not on his... He's the one that just donated these beautiful cups to the tune of 25,000 of these, and each one costs more than a half a shekel. Lidnishmas is shver. So we drink who? Lidnishmas is Yeshua Tzvi ben Reb Menachem Moshe Zechron Levracha. He's from the givers, not from the takers. He's the one that also made a beautiful suuda in our sukkah. He wanted to do it himself. He brought over his kids. It's unbelievable. Not that he's a nurse in Eretz Yisrael. A Tzala member, or this or that. He's a big Bal Chesed. He started at Tzala here in Ramat Beit Shemesh. One is shiur that Yisrael, where's Yisrael? Is he here? Yisrael, get over here, Yisrael, with your cup. Who is 11 years old and comes daily to the daf with me, had the option of watching the soccer game tonight Why is that an option? Okay. Which finishes around midnight, but chose not to watch it, go to sleep on time to be up for the daf tomorrow morning. And here he is, Rabbi Isai. Who won? The team that you were rooting for. Don't tell us the name. Who is it? Who? Shkoyach. But you know why they won? Because you gave up and you learned Torah. All right, it's fine. Rabbi Isai, this month's koil is sponsored anonymously for Shiduchim. Parnasah chodesh, dishmaya of Zechrya, Shimon, הכהן, וואלערשטיין, Zechus, We're going to really miss him by his kids. Parnasah chodesh is Lzchus to Ahron Hatzlacha and to you. And the video editor of Hatzlacha in continuation, I'm missing a shiur. The Zechus, by the way, the editor got a brand new, very, very top of the line computer, which was sponsored by many different people that got together. So Be'ezer Hashem, it's going to be up and running probably by next week. And we hope to see some nice taitzais. Maybe he'll get a little bit more sleep.
Can I have to warn you when I acting to the video? No.
If they're good. Parnasah chodesh Ahron Fraiman Lzchus continue parnasah siyadta dishmaya and Hatzlacha to rebelli. Yishkoyach. Parnasah chodesh the Boyer family. Eli Stefansky ben Abraham Neri Yoyer, 59 years old. The Wolkenstein family in Main Kemach in Torah and Kemach by the Lock and Lebovic families of Lakewood, New Jersey. B3 bicycles. They have 3 stores. You believe that? Because Torah, that's how big Lakewood is. That's 3 stores in Lakewood. I was born in Lakewood. It wasn't so big when I was born. I remember it, mamish vividly. Not only did I start walking when I was 6 months old, but I also remember Lakewood when I was a month. The guy wrote to me. I didn't say his whole thing, but he said a whole drush about Guinness World's Record. But I think he misunderstood. I wasn't saying that I wanted to be in the Guinness World. I was saying that if it's in the Guinness World's Record that somebody walked at the age of 6 months, then it means that I probably did not walk at the age of 6 months. But my mother's not here to defend herself. But my father said the same thing. He doesn't know anything about dates. But my brother always heard it from my mother. I don't know what the pshat is. Don't know. Maybe they flipped over the 6 and the 9. I don't know. And honestly, as HaKaras HaTov to Hashem as a Zechus for continued health and bracha. And finally, anonymously, for Hatzlacha. Wow, this is very confusing. Anonymously as HaKaras HaTov this. Anonymously as Hatzlacha. Okay. Rabbi Isai, here we go. You're not a guest. Who else? You're a regular. Who? Oh, he's also not a guest. Mendel Zach's a guest. Fifth time here this year. Fourth time here. Okay, you see? Oh, here's a guest. What's your name? Toy. You look very similar. Okay. Yes. Welcome. From where? Where do you live? Brooklyn, New York. All right, Rabbi Isai, we're on the bottom of Daf Amud Beis. We're in the middle of a sugya. Nichsei Tzayin Barzel. As you can see, the Tzayin Barzel. Why is it called Tzayin Barzel? I might have missed the Barzel part. Barzel means metal, strong as metal. When a wife comes into a marriage and she brings in slaves and she tells her husband, you're responsible, so they're strong as metal. Whatever the price is, whatever the value is, at the end of the marriage, if they get divorced or he dies, that's how much he's responsible to give her. So, we had a situation where they were getting divorced. What?
Whatever the value is at the beginning of the marriage.
Whatever the value is at the beginning of the marriage, that's what they pay at the end of the marriage. It's locked in like metal. So, Tzayin is a different story. We're not going to go into that. We had a situation where a couple was getting divorced. She demanded to have her chandeliers and her heirlooms and all the stuff that she brought in. And he says, no, since I'm responsible for everything, I was responsible for 20 years of marriage, I'm just going to pay you cash. I don't want to take it off the ceiling and start messing around. Whose is it? Rabbi Yehuda says, it's hers, she gets to take it. Says the Gemara, Rav L'tamei. Bottom line on Daf Amud Beis. Rav L'tamei. By the way, yesterday, Yosef Biliak was telling me that he wants a camera on you because you say such, I promise you. Like one of the cameras should be focused on Rabbi Steinhardt, the guy that works out, he tells me. Couldn't remember your name for a second. Right? Here he is. That's it. Now, from now on, he's not going to say anything. I wanted him to slow down a little bit. Now we're going to put one on Benny. Now he's getting louder and louder. He gets more and more comfortable as the days go on. We have three situations where somebody owes money. Ruvain is a borrower. He owes money. So what does he do? He gives the lender, either he gives him an animal, he gives him food, or he gives him a slave. He owes a lot of money. Here's a $20,000 slave. Here's the animal. What does he do, this Chaverman? He goes ahead and he says, the animal that I gave the lender should be Hegdish. So it turns into Hegdish. He has because he's the owner, he has the right to do so. Chametz, it turns into, Pesach comes along, he gave a guy the chametz, but he didn't give it to him. Rashi says he still has possession of it. It turned into chametz. So that goes away and he has to give him money. And the same thing with the slave. He gives the lender a slave as collateral, and then he goes ahead and he frees the slave. So over here also, when we have a situation, we had a woman who brought into the marriage, she brought a nice coat, a silk thing, and then the Yisraelim went ahead and they took it and they laid it on top of the dead. So he said, it's mechusar gavaina, she wasn't able to collect it, and therefore it remains asur bahana like anything else that protects or touches the dead. This is the same idea, that at the end of the day, she is the lender, and they did something, they took it away from her. They made it hegdish, they made it chametz, they put it on the dead person, it became hegdish. Amar Rav Yehuda. Chnisa lo shnei kelim be'elev zuz. So she brings into the marriage two kelim, let's say a nice piano and a candelabra. Okay, 2 kelim. The beginning of the marriage, elev zuz, they're worth 1,000. And then they went up in value. Who gains the value of nichsei tzayin barzil? The husband. So now, but they're heirlooms. She wants to bring them back to her father. It's a nice candelabra that came from generation, went through the war, the whole thing. So what happens? So the Gemara says, so ksuba is not literal. Ksuba means, as they wrote in the ksuba in the beginning, that it's tzayin barzil. So she gets the 1,000 because that's how much he owes her 1,000. That's how much he took responsibility. But at the end of the day, she wants both. In terms of monetary value, he only owes her 1,000. But in terms of, we as we said yesterday, the top of the Amud Beis, Rabbi Yehuda says that the Shalom Aleichem Benzi, I was all excited when I saw your truck in the front. We're talking about Shevach Beis Aviyah. Right? The honor of her father's house, the whole thing. There's such a thing called sentimental value. So she wants that piano also. Says the Gemara, so she pays her husband the difference. Because of the sentimental value, or whatever you want to call it, she gets to keep both items, but she has to pay for one. Says the Gemara, Michael Mashmalon. We just said that was the whole pshat in Rav Yehuda. That at the end of the day, when they argue when they get divorced, she wins because of the sentimental value. She gets to keep all the stuff she brought in. So what's the chiddush here? Says the Gemara, very simple. Over here it's a tremendous chiddush. First, we say that case. Don't ask me your question. Then you say another case. We add to it. It's loizu avzu. Not loizu avzu, but we're going to add a chiddush to it. That what? That she has the ability to pay for items. Yesterday, we just said they're gonna divide it. She gets the items, he gets to keep the money, rather than him paying her for the items. Over here, we're saying that she has the ability to go to the husband and say, listen, it went up in value, and I'm going to pay you the difference in the value. She could do that. Maybe she could only take items that are worth 1,000 because that's all he guaranteed is 1,000, and the rest has to stay with him. No, she could pay for her items. That's a big chiddush. Says the official Mishnah sponsor for Zechus for my wife and children. Bas Yisrael shenisis l'kohen umeis. What? Should I tell everybody what happened? No, it's Pashat. Not Pashat, but I'm saying they just that. Should I tell everybody the story? No. The Olam doesn't know the story. Maybe there was a time, and we were in the old building, and we were learning a similar Gemara. And Noam Fix asked me, so why don't you just say the second case first, and not the bigger Chiddush? Say the bigger Chiddush first, and you won't have to say the first Chiddush. So I picked up my Gemara, and I flipped it around, and it said, Noam Fix is going to ask me, how come it says the first case? And that was it. From then on, he doesn't ask that question anymore. Right? Ma'aseh Shahaya. So, it's a good question. Sometimes the Gemara asks it, sometimes it's not whatever. I don't know when you ask and when you don't ask the question. Over here, obviously, the Gemara didn't ask it. The Gemara just said, okay, we're going to tell you another Chiddush. Bas Yisrael shenisis l'kohen umeis. So, we have like this. We have a situation where a kohen. Is this the thing I'm looking for? Okay. Bas Yisrael shenisis l'kohen umeis v'nicha mu'beres. So let's look at this case for a second. First case. You have a kohen who has children, and the kohen goes bye-bye. So because he left over children, so his wife, who came from a Yisrael family, since she was eating truma when they were married, she continues to eat truma even after her husband dies, because she has children that are kohanim. Now, if there is a slave that's a tsoim barzel, the slave is owned by the husband, so to speak, because he has the responsibility. That responsibility goes down to the children. So the slave eats truma, right? Because again, the guy in the Hamburg, he was responsible on the green jacketed slave, and the slave ate truma. Now that he goes bye-bye, the children take over that position. He continues to eat truma. The wife also continues to eat truma. Tremendous chiddush in the Mishnah. Look at this. I don't have a picture of Leah pregnant, so I just decided that this, what is it called? The stork resembles a pregnancy, okay? He's not born yet, okay? So pretend that this little kid, Naftali Bennett, is not born yet. So she's pregnant. Just by being pregnant with a baby, it ruins it for the slave. Why? Either because of this pasuk, because it says v'yilid beisai, you have to be born and alive in order to feed. V'koyin kikin and nefesh kinyan kaspo hu yochel boy. V'yilid beisai heim yochel belachmai. The kinyan kaspo, the slave, gets to eat truma if you have a yilid bayis, if you have offspring that are born and alive. But in the stomach, it ruins it. Or there's another pshat. What? Even though there's other brothers, 100%. That's why I did this. I'm showing you right here. Why? Because the Gemara is going to go through it. Either the guy in the stomach is a kohen, but he's not alive, and not alive he can't eat, but he owns the slave. He owns, how much does he own of that slave? A third of a slave is owned by somebody that can't eat truma. It's, for example, that guy in green slave is owned by Yisrael. Stop. Two people own a slave. A kohen and Yisrael. Could that slave eat truma? No, because 50% of him is Yisrael. Over here, 33% of him is a baby in the stomach, which is problematic because of a pasuk. Or the baby in the stomach is considered a Yisrael, because his mother is Yisrael, and he only becomes a kohen when he's born. It's shayla in the Gemara. We're going to see in a second. So let's see, he's a Yisrael. Now we understand even better, because now the slave is owned 33% by a Yisrael. Continues the Mishnah.
The picture is confusing because of the fact that they have born already, as opposed to it being in the mother's.
Yeah, but I write underneath it Uber. Read. It says Uber. It's not alive yet. I get it. How am I going to depict it? You have a better idea. Plus, I couldn't get a hold of the artist at 3 a.m. Lo yoichlu avodea betruma. These tzoyin barzel slaves should not eat truma. What if the eved is not a tzoyin barzel? He's a nichse milug. Does it make a difference? Yes. Why? Because nichse milug, who owns the nichse milug 100%? She does, and she could eat truma. So in Mela, he also eats truma. The whole problem is that the kids own him, and one of the kids is not a good enough kid. He's a uber. But if the kids don't own him, it's a nichse milug, then this eved could eat no problem. Why? And the Mishnah explains, the uber, the chelik, the part that he owns or is supposed to be getting, ruins it. By the way, later on Rashi says, I'm going to forget to say it, if they divide it right now and they say, okay, Reuven gets that part, Levi gets that slave, and the uber gets the third slave, l'chayr, you could eat. Okay, it's only because they didn't divide it yet, and each slave is owned 33% by each kid. You told us this case where the wife Leah is a Yisraelis who only married a Kohen, right? Mendel, you know the Kohen stuff. Avbas Kohen leKohen umeis v'nichum uberes. Then there's no difference. Look at this case where, here. You have a Bas Kohen who married a Yisrael. Should be the same thing. Why? Here, right over here. Because at the end of the day, according to you, it has nothing to do with a Yisraelis. Just the mere fact that she is pregnant, even a kohenes that comes from a mishpach of kohanim who married a Yisrael, she also, the uber should ruin, sorry, not this case. I said Bas Kohen Yisrael. There's another case somewhere. Yeah. No. Here. Right over here. Okay. It's all the way there. You have a Bas Kohen who married a Kohen, the plumber from Muncie happens to be a Kohen, and she already has 2 children. But by the fact that she's pregnant, it ruins it. Because, as we explained, the child, that's the fetus, ruins it for all slaves. Says the Gemara Boilu. Let's go back here for a second. I don't want to... Okay. Iboilu. Time of the Rabbi Yossi, what's going on here? Zaru is the reason because the fact that she's pregnant, the fetus has a halacha of Yisrael because it wasn't born yet, and the Yisrael has ownership in a slave, and that slave shouldn't be able to eat truma. There's a shaila, by the way, about the zoo. The animals in the zoo. Is it the same thing? If, let's say, there's a partnership on the animals, there's a 50% partnership, the kohen carp from Batayin owns 50% and another Yisrael owns the other 50%. Does that ruin it? Could you feed the animals Trumas Meiser and Truma or not? L'chayr not. But there are those who say yes. But now we're talking about a slave. Or perhaps the problem is that he's not born. He's a complete kohen in uterus. But he is not born and he ruins it for the slave that he owns. What about if the kohenes is expecting? Thank you. I don't know if we ever use that lashon. Okay, the fetus is expecting. That what? She's a kohenes, so therefore her uber is a kohen. On the other hand, if you say that an unborn fetus ruins it, so it doesn't matter if the mother is a kohenes or not a kohenes, it'll ruin it. But if the problem is that the uber is a Yisrael, he's not a Yisrael because the mother is a kohen. The problem is because it's considered, the fetus is considered Yisrael. He only becomes a kohen when he comes into the world. Rabbi Yosef Amar Yolud Machel, Sheni Yolud Eini Machel. So we have a machlokes here. Rabbi Yosef says the problem is that he's not born, not because he's a Yisrael. Meisvei, So we have a Bam Kasha, Amr Lo Rabbi Yosi, Macher Shahad Lanu, Abbas Israel L'Koyen, and they asked him in the end of the Mishnah, Bas Koyen L'Koyen Mahu, and he didn't, Amr Lahem. So what did he answer? Not in our Mishnah, but in the Bryce he answers them. Zu Shamati v'Zu Lo Shamati. What does that mean? The words Zu Shamati. When the first case of our Mishnah you heard, and it's usher for him to eat. The second case that it's the Bas Kohen who's married to a Kohen, Lo Shamati, meaning mutter to eat. Why mutter to eat? She's expecting. Doesn't that ruin it for the slave? That's why it's 100% mutter, because the mother is a kohenes. So the baby is a kohen, even though it's not born yet. But if the whole problem is that it's unborn, nothing to do with who the mother is, what's the difference if the mother's a kohenes or a Yisraelis? They're both usher because they're both not in the world. Kashya, it's a great kashya. Shmuel. Zu Divrei Rabbi Yosi. Chacham comes Shmuel and says, no, there is a machlekes here. Yesh banim oichlim. If the woman has children, then the slaves eat. Mishum banim, because of the children. In other words, we don't care about the fact that she's expecting. It doesn't do anything. Eli banim oichlim mishum achim. If there's no Eloi banim moichlem mishum achim, Eloi achim moichlem mishum mishpacha kula. So says every Jew has relatives that we learn all over. So if there's no sons, there's brothers to the one that died. There's uncles. Somewhere you go, you spread out, you'll find somebody. Fine. Zok the Gemara. Zu v'loisvirlei. When Shmuel said, this is what Rabbi Yosi says, he himself doesn't hold that. Ha'amar li Shmuel, but Shmuel does hold like that. Shmuel himself said the Rav Chana Bagdasah. So all over Shas, I didn't have to look in the art scroll, but he says him in Furish. All over Shas, Bagdasah, Rashi always explains he's from Baghdad. Over here, we have a treat. He says there's another pshat. He's a balagoda. Okay? Go out, grab 10 people so that I could tell the world about this unbelievable halacha. If you have 10 people that hear it, ba'ape asara, call it. 10 people hear it, it's going to become famous as halacha. The emalach ba'ampayu hamezakil uberkana. So you see from here, like Rabbi Yosi, that what? If I say this computer right over here is to the fetus grabs it, even though he's not in the world yet. So certainly Yerusha. You don't have to give it to him. You don't have to make a tanai with him. He just got it from his father. He owns slaves. If he owns a slave, he owns a piece of the slave. It's no good. You can't eat. So in other words, you see Shmuel holds like Rabbi Yosi. Ella, you're right. Shmuel does hold like Rabbi Yosi. Zu b'svirlei. Ma'ikam ashvalon. So what's the chiddush? The pligi Rabbanan lei Rabbi Yosi. Umi pligi. Mazar Rabbi Zakai. Is there a machlokes here? Zu eidus heid Rabbi Yosi mi pi shmaya v'avtalyon. V'oidoloi, which is an interesting halacha because lashon. Rabbi Yosi, by the way, we said the other day. Who's Rabbi Yosi? Who's his Rebbe? Rekiva, one of the Talmidim, right? One of the 5. The Ramayim Torah. So he's all the way into the generation by Rabbi Kiva. Shmaya and Avtalyon are from the Zugas. I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of years before, right? Shmaya and Avtalyon, Hillel's Rabbeim. But he says a lashon. Zu edus hayed Rabbi Yosi mepi. So mepi doesn't mean he heard it from their mouth. Mepi means he heard the Shmaya and Avtalyon said. V'hayduloi. So Rabbi Yosi says that all Chachamim agreed to him. Or Rashi miktani v'kiblu. V'hayduloi tani. The Mistaber time, interesting stuff. That it doesn't say they accepted and they went with it. They admitted that he might be right. But it's too bad. They have a tradition that opposes that shita, even though it seems right. Haidulai, Mistaber time, you're right. Misvara, if we had to argue and establish a halacha today, Rabbi Yosi, you're right. Well, what can we do? We have a different tradition. And finished. Torah Bana. So, if a Kohen marries a Yisraelis and he has children, Elu ve'elu oichlim. What's Elu ve'elu? The 2 types of slaves. The Nichse Melug and the tzoyin barzel. I have to find my place here in these. What? We're going to go through the whole thing. She's not expecting. But what if she's pregnant? No one eats, even the mother. Who? What if she has both? So now, muberes means she doesn't have anything. She doesn't have children, but she's expecting. Just expecting is not enough for her to eat truma. Her husband died. Her Kayan husband died. She is Israelis. So at this point, if she has a child, a girl, a boy, she'll start eating again. But at this point, she's expecting, she can't eat. What about the slaves? They also can't eat. First of all, her Nichsei Meluk slaves can't eat. Why? She herself is not eating. And the Nichsei Tzoyin Barzel, they're his, not hers. So Mela, she doesn't eat. They don't eat. That's our case. She has both.
So who inherits it? So who inherits the Tzoyin Barzel? Thank God she has a miscarriage. So now she's
They're hers. The Tzoyin Barzel, well, he owes it to her. The husband owes her that amount, no? They made a deal. It's Barzel. Most of it will go back to her. Depends if it lost value, didn't lose value. She probably gets them back. He might have to add a little bit from the estate. We'll have to pay her. He left. She has children. So now she has kohanim children. So what's the halacha? She gets to eat truma, and she's muberes, and she's pregnant. Her slaves, Meluk slaves, they eat truma. Which are considered his slaves, because he has a chrayas, no chiddush for us now, because this is exactly what we set up until now. So I got to show you what this is, if I can find it. Here. If she has a son from a kohen, so she eats. Einoi machel means that the muberes doesn't eat at all. Einoi machel, that's einoi machel. Poisel means that if she's a kohen, so let's go back. Machel means he doesn't allow her to eat because she's the Israelis and she cannot eat. That's machel. Typically she wouldn't eat. If she had a son, a kohen like this, the kohen's son would be machel his mother. The expecting mother does not get to eat truma. But what does poisel mean? Poisel means this, that if she's roy to eat because she's a kohenes, her husband dies, she goes back to her father's house, but the fact that she's pregnant ruins it. So we're going to see that's like unfair. The baby ruins it in both directions. If she's a kohenes, we say, oh, she's pregnant. Her husband is Yisrael. Her husband, look, sorry, not this. This is not a good one. I knew it's going to, there's 22 charts here. What? Let me just see. Maybe I just messed up this chart. I wrote that he's a kohen. The point is, forget that he's a kohen here. The fact that she goes back to her parents doesn't help over here because she's expecting from Yisrael. Maybe there's another one over here. I don't want to go back all the way. What?
It works negative in both ways.
It works negative in both ways. If she's a Yisrael, married to a kohen, and she's pregnant, no, it doesn't count. The pregnancy doesn't count. So it's a negative. If she's a kohenes, married to Yisrael, and she wants to go back to her father's house and eat trouble, no, you're pregnant. Oh, you might have a kid. You might have a kid at Yisrael. The kids. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi, Omer Mishumaviv, Habas Macheles. We have to explain it later what this means. A daughter, and we're going to say, by the way, if we stop right over here, what does a bas mean? Nobody would guess this in a million years. Bas doesn't mean the daughter in this case. The Gemara says the maskana, it means the mother. Versus a son. Because we're talking about a son. Does a son give the ability to the mother to eat? The bas gives the ability. Who's the bas? She herself, the mother. Okay? Not a daughter, but the mother. It's a little, and because of this word, bas, it's a whole amud of Gemara, going back and forth. What's going on there until we finally, if the Gemara would just said mother, we wouldn't have had an amud of Gemara here. Says the Gemara, Habas Macheles, Habeneinu Machel. Reb Shimon bar Yochai Omer, Zcharim yoichlu. So if they're sons, the slaves eat. So what's very interesting here is that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, as we're going to see in the Gemara, is not choshesh l'miut. Think about this for a second. How many boys and girls are born in the world every year, percentage-wise? Let's pretend it's 50-50. Maybe in our days it's like 49.9 and 51. It's a little off. I think there's more girls that are born. But we don't know what it was 100 years, 200 years ago. It might have been, it's like throwing dice. It's not never 50-50. It's supposed to be. Okay, fine. So 50-50. However, if I ask you how many births are going to be boys, births, is it 50-50? No. Because a lot of people, unfortunately, they miscarry. So you got to take all the miscarriages into account. How many births are boys? Less than 50%. Because there's only 50% pregnancies that are boys, and from those 50%, there's miscarriages. So Mamela, over here, when we're looking at this woman, what does she have? She's expecting. But what is she expecting? She must be expecting, in order to ruin it for us, she has to be expecting a boy who could inherit a slave. The girl is not going to inherit a slave. So I'm looking at the pregnancies, it's only, let's say, 48% chance that a boy is going to be born now. Because 50% are boys and 2-3% are miscarriages. You're right, but in terms of pregnancies, how many are going to come out into the world? No, the result of the pregnancy. That doesn't matter to us. When I'm looking at this pregnancy today, what's the chance that it's going to be a boy? So Eliyakim asked in the Kail, interesting question. I think the answer is simple, but what do you think? He said, there's another case that ups the percentages of boys. How? A pregnancy of twins, a boy and a girl twin. It counts for a boy because a boy inherits. It's 100% boy when you have one girl, one boy in a pregnancy of twins, it counts as a boy because we're talking about how many pregnancies end up with somebody that inherits. Not a boy, somebody that inherits. The pregnancy of twins is gonna end up with a, okay. But the answer probably is, but there's more miscarriages than pregnancies of twins. What?
Were there more male miscarriages?
No, there aren't more male miscarriages. But that goes into the column of not inheriting. That's what he was asking, what you're asking. Of the 50% male, they're not going to inherit, so we don't have to worry about him. Oh boy, we didn't even turn the page. Zok Gemara. Kulon nekevos lo yechelu. The slaves cannot eat if they're all girls. Shami yamatzi uba zachar. Because what if it turns out that she gave birth to a zachar? He's going to inherit anything. Ask the Gemara, my iri shami yamatzi uba zachar. Why do I have to say? Because maybe it's going to be a boy. Tebeglei de nekeva nami pasla. Even if the nekeva is, even if the pregnancy is a girl, it also passes. Says Gemara, it's two reasons. Says Gemara, now the Gemara just explain what we decide. If the children around are zcharim, but what about the fact that she's pregnant? Says Gemara, that we explain. Sponsored by Moshe Horn and the Gold Star Multi-Donut. Sponsored anonymously as Zechus for Moshe Yaakov and Shana and both the Ruchlins and Gashmias. You buy same. Lo'elam kasavar chayshim l'miyuta. No, we are chayshim that perhaps it's going to be a boy. The Avdin l'takantik, the Rav Nachman Shmuel. Very good. What's the whole problem? That this child is going to inherit a slave, and if he inherits a slave, he's not alive yet, and he ruins it. A non-alive child ruins a slave. He can't eat truma. But there's a way out of it. Here, forget Rashi. Gemara talks about it. If Bezdin sets aside a guardian and apitropos, each and every child gets an apitropos, so that they have the best interest of that child, and they set aside an apitropos for the expecting child, the fetus, so he gets this slave, so he doesn't, the fetus is not owning a slave. But however, when they get older, they could say they want a different shiur. Rav Nachman says they cannot switch it up. Once it's done, it's done. You have to give power to the apotropos, to the bezdin. So Mela, they don't give any part of the slaves to the ubar. They give him real estate, they give him cars, but no slaves, and therefore the slaves could eat truma. Says the Gemara, but the Lemaisa, the Tanakama says mefurish that if she's pregnant, there's no way in the world the slave could eat. But you could if you just do a little trick. Everybody agrees that you could do that, but they didn't. They didn't do so, and therefore the machlekes says whether or not there's a miyut. if we have to be chayshish like a miyut. Remember the whole sugya of Remeir. If you have a yavam who's a child, does he do yibam? Because perhaps he's going to turn out to be a saris, or she's an islandess. The whole thing. Are we chayshish for miyut or not? Famous Remeir who's chayshish l'miyut. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosi Omer Mishum Aviv. Rabbi Shmuel says the name of his father, and the Gemara is going to say that he only said this in the name of his father. Nobody else said it. Habas macheles haben enoi machel. Maishna ben deloy machel. What does it mean? A daughter could feed the slaves, the son doesn't. What's the difference? Mishum chelke shalubar. Bas nami loitach mishum chelke shalubar. At the end of the day, how could a daughter let a slave eat? She's not born yet. So, very interesting. We're talking about a case where you didn't leave much to inherit. Very, very little. And when you leave very little, then the daughters get the entire inheritance. Even though, midaraisa, they don't get anything. They get everything. They have to live. So they get, what do the boys do? Oh, so for this, I got to tell you, there was a guy on his deathbed. He called all his children. He said, I want to tell you that you, Ruvain, I have a whole block in Bar Park. That's all yours. You, Shimon, you get 14th Avenue. He said, we had no idea you own all this real estate. He said, no. That's my schnorr route. You get 13th Avenue, you get 14th Avenue. Okay. Sometimes you have to go schnorring. That's what it says over here. What? There's a guy that taught his kids how to schnorr. He said, I have to teach you an occupation so you're not dependent on anybody. Zog the Gemara. There's 1,000,001 schnorr jokes. For Yevamos, great. I'll buy more. Okay, Zog the Gemara. So, bottom line, Rashi just says, the daughters get the Yerusha, the sons have to go collect money, knock from door to door. There's a son here, he gets nothing. And the Gemara says, the Gemara explains, what happened? She's pregnant? Great. If the child, the fetus, is going to turn out to be a son, he's also going to have to go collecting. Ibasi, what? This little uber in the stomach, she's a girl who's going to need to come on to the little nechasim that were left over by the father. Let's wait until she's born. Right now, she doesn't inherit the special halacha that she gets. It's an emergency fund. Yeah, the guy left $1,000 and we start supporting the live girls. We're not going to support the fetus girl. What is this? A mass protest? Everybody getting up? We said 8 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock. Look at that. Look at the clock. It's literally 8:00. What? You were here at 6:15 for Karbanas, Yosef? And Mamish exactly on the minute? No, I don't think so. Kind of everybody's getting up. Go. I'll stay. I don't care. I'll stay by myself. We'll just go to the Mishnah, I guess. Hashem Yirachem. Motzei Shabbos is a great time to make it up. Fine. So the Gemara asks the obvious question. If it's a case that he didn't leave anything to inherit, just $1,000, let's say, Ema Seifa doesn't have to fit into the Seifa, it should be the same exact case. Reisha Seifa always the same, right? Almost always. Besides here, Shema Yomatze Uber Zocha Vein Labanis B'Makim Ben Klum. What's the case? We're concerned that maybe the fetus is going to be a Zachar, and then the daughters don't have anything. Adrab and Chasim Wadim the Banis Nino. It's not even the sons, it's the daughters. Says Gemara, no, save us on Nechasim Merubim. It's a different case where there's a lot of money left over. Nechasim Mu'atim the Banis Ninu. Now, Stam is that we have to know if there's very few Nechasim to inherit, and we say it goes to the daughters. Is that true? Is that a fact? What happens if they jumped ahead instead of giving it to their sisters like they're supposed to? The Chazerim went, sold the car, sold the piano. They need to eat. They don't want to knock on doors. It's a good mechira. Mashu machru machru. So you see who owns it? Who lemaisa tachlos owns it? The boys. Velamai, basik tani, aim. So we have to see here. 1 second. Right over here. So it goes like this. When it says bas, it's not talking about that she's pregnant with a daughter. It's talking about she herself. You see where it says, let me see if I can do this real quickly. Right over here. Talking about this woman right over here. She's the bas. She's a bas Yisrael. Married to a kahn. That's not what it means. So it says like this. If she has a son and a ubar, here, this guy's a ubar, she's pregnant, so then her slave doesn't eat. But if she has a son from a kahn, and it's and the melug, the only difference is melug. The only difference in these two things is melug and soim barzel. In this case, when she has a son and a ubar, then her slave eats because it's melug, and if it's soim barzel, they don't eat. That's what it means, bas. Bas aim. Okay. Then what did his son, Rabbi Shmuel, add to his father? Nothing. Zero. It's the same exact thing as Rabbi Yossi said the whole time. Those are the halachas. So Gemara, you're right. Kula Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi, Ketani law. It was one saying said by Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yossi. Have a wonderful day, a great Shabbos, 10 o'clock, Motzei Shabbos.